Someone called you stupid 10 years ago. You still hear it. Someone told you you were brilliant last week. Gone. That's not a coincidence. That's your brain actively working against you. And once you understand why, you will never see yourself the same way again. Psychologists call it negativity bias, but that phrase makes it sound manageable, like something you can just think your way out of. You can't. Because this isn't a thinking problem, it's a wiring problem. Your brain is built at the hardware level to catalog every threat, every humiliation, every failure, and treat praise like spam. And most people spend their entire lives wondering why they feel like nothing they do is ever good enough. Why the one critical comment in a sea of compliments is the only one they can actually hear. This is why. And it goes much deeper than you think. 200,000 years ago, your ancestors woke up every single morning with one job. Don't die, not be happy, not feel confident, not build a fulfilling life. Don't die. And in that world, ignoring a compliment cost you nothing. Someone in your tribe tells you that you're a great hunter, great, nice to hear. Doesn't change your survival odds either way. But ignoring a threat, missing the sound in the bushes, trusting the wrong person, eating the wrong berry, that gets you killed. So the ancestors who paid obsessive attention to danger, who replayed threats, who stayed hypervigilant, who never fully relaxed, those people survived. They had children, and those children had children. And somewhere down that long line of anxious, threat-obsessed survivors, you were born. You are the descendant of the world's greatest warriors. Every single one of your ancestors made it. And the price of that survival is a brain that is permanently structurally tilted toward the negative. That's not a flaw. That was the feature. The problem is the world changed, and your brain didn't get the memo. So now you're sitting in a Tuesday afternoon meeting. Your boss uses a slightly flat tone when she responds to your idea. And your amygdala, the ancient threat detector sitting deep in your brain, fires like a five-alarm emergency. It floods your body with cortisol. It signals your hippocampus to record everything: the tone of her voice, the way she tilted her head, the exact words she used, the temperature of the room. Because to your brain, this feels exactly like the predator in the bushes. The threat is social now, but the hardware running the response is 200,000 years old. It cannot tell the difference between a tiger and a passive-aggressive email. It responds to both with identical urgency. Record this. Do not forget this. This person is dangerous. And that cortisol flooding your system, it acts as a memory consolidator. It physically burns the experience deeper into your neural tissue. That's why you can remember with perfect clarity exactly where you were, exactly what you were wearing, exactly how you felt the last time someone humiliated you in public. But a specific compliment from last week, gone, vague at best. This is not a coincidence. This is the system working exactly as designed. Researcher John Gottman spent decades studying relationships and found something that stopped him cold. It takes 5 positive interactions to cancel out a single negative one, 5 to 1, just to reach neutral, not happy, not thriving, neutral. And in your own internal dialogue, the way you talk to yourself inside your own head, the ratio is even worse. Most people are running a deficit of 20 or 30 to 1, which means the genuine compliment your partner gave you this morning requires 20 more before your brain will even begin to update its self-assessment. This is why you can receive 9 pieces of positive feedback and 1 piece of criticism, and spend the rest of the day thinking about the criticism. You're not weak. You're not insecure. You're not broken. You're human. Running ancient software. Now stop, because I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Okay, I'm wired for negativity. I'm descended from warriors. The math is against me, so I'm just stuck like this forever? No. And I'm going to show you precisely how to change it. But first I need to tell you about a study conducted with Buddhist monks that completely shattered what neuroscientists believed about the adult brain. What they found was so unexpected that researchers were reluctant to publish it, because the implications were deeply uncomfortable for the entire field. That's coming in about 90 seconds. But before that, there's something most people completely miss about why this bias hits certain people 10 times harder than others. And it has nothing to do with trauma, nothing to do with childhood, nothing to do with personality type. Most people never identify this, and not knowing it means every strategy they try to feel better eventually fails. It's called your default mode network. Your DMN is the neural system that activates when you are doing nothing. Not sleeping, just idle, daydreaming, staring out a window, waiting for the coffee to brew. And here is what your brain defaults to in that idle state: threat scanning, replaying social failures, rehearsing future embarrassments, mentally editing past conversations and finding everything you should have said differently, imagining worst-case scenarios in relationships and careers that haven't happened yet and probably never will. Your brain's screensaver is a horror movie, and it runs automatically the moment you stop giving your mind something else to focus on. Now here's the part that matters. People with highly active default mode networks don't just remember real insults more vividly. They manufacture new ones. They replay a completely neutral conversation and find the threat that was never actually there. A friend's short text response becomes rejection. A colleague's distracted expression becomes contempt. A moment of silence becomes proof of something being deeply wrong. Your brain doesn't just record negativity. Left unsupervised, it generates it. Harvard researchers tracked this and found that people spend 46.9% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they are actually doing. And that mind-wandering was consistently, reliably, causally linked to unhappiness. Not occasionally, consistently. Your brain, left to its own devices, will choose suffering. That is not pessimism. That is the data. Now, the monks. In the early 2000s, neuroscientist Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin brought Tibetan Buddhist monks into his lab. These were monks with 10,000, 15,000, even 50,000 hours of meditation practice. He wired them up to brain scanners, the most sophisticated imaging equipment available at the time, and measured their neural activity. What he found broke the foundational assumption that had governed neuroscience for decades. The assumption was this: the adult brain is fixed. You get what you get. The structure you have at 25 is essentially the structure you carry for life. Neural pathways are set, patterns are permanent. The monks destroyed that assumption completely. Their left prefrontal cortexes, the region most associated with positive emotion, with equanimity, with the ability to experience well-being without grasping at it, were structurally different, physically thicker, more developed than any brains Davidson's team had ever measured. Not because they were born that way, because they had trained that way. Scientists named the phenomenon neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to physically reorganize itself in response to repeated experience. And what it proved, what it demonstrated beyond any reasonable scientific doubt, is that the negativity bias is not a life sentence. Your brain is a trainable organ. The question is what to train it with, and the answer is not what most people expect. Here is what the research actually says works: not affirmations, not toxic positivity, not forcing yourself to look on the bright side. Those approaches fail because they try to override the system through willpower, and willpower loses to wiring every single time. What works is working with the mechanics. The first mechanism is savoring. When something genuinely good happens, a moment of success, a real compliment, a feeling of connection, your brain will not automatically encode it the way it encodes threats. You have to create the encode manually. You do this by holding the experience in your conscious awareness for a minimum of 15 to 30 seconds, not rushing past it, not immediately deflecting with self-deprecation or skepticism, just staying in it, deliberately. Neuropsychologist Rick Hanson calls this taking in the good. You are essentially performing a manual override on a system that was set to auto-delete positive experiences. 15 seconds. Held consciously. That is the difference between an experience that evaporates and one that builds a new neural pathway. The second mechanism is reappraisal, not suppression, not denial. Reappraisal. When an insult replays, and it will replay, that's the nature of the system. You do not try to push it down. Suppression strengthens memories. What you do instead is interrogate the memory. You cross-examine it like a lawyer. Is this true? Is this the complete truth, or is this one data point pulled out of context? Who said this, and what was happening in their life when they said it? What were they afraid of? What were they protecting? What would I need to believe about myself to take this as objective fact? You are not dismissing the memory. You are dismantling its authority over you. There is a significant difference. The third mechanism is DMN interruption. The moment you catch your brain running the horror movie screensaver, replaying humiliations, catastrophizing, generating imaginary threats, you introduce structured cognitive load. A specific problem to solve, a question that requires real thought, physical movement, a task with clear steps. This works because rumination and active problem solving cannot occupy the same neural bandwidth simultaneously. They compete for the same resources. When you force your brain into genuine cognitive engagement, the default mode network cannot sustain its spiral. You are not fighting the pattern. You are replacing it with something that uses the same hardware. These are not life hacks. These are not motivational strategies. These are evidence-based interventions that target the specific neural mechanisms driving the problem. Here is the last thing I want to leave you with. Your brain is not broken. It is not betraying you. It is not your enemy. It is doing exactly what 200,000 years of survival pressure trained it to do. It is keeping you alive the only way it knows how, by making sure you never forget a threat, never ignore a danger signal, never let your guard down completely. That was the right strategy for a very long time. But you are living in a world your brain was not designed for, and you are the first generation in human history with enough neuroscience, enough understanding of the actual mechanisms, to look at that inherited hardware and consciously choose to update it. That is not a small thing. That is a genuinely extraordinary thing. The insults your brain has been saving for years, they were survival files, encoded to keep you safe from dangers that no longer exist in the form they were designed for. You don't need them the way you did. And now you know exactly how to start rewriting them. If this shifted something for you, the next video on how chronic stress physically reshapes your brain structure is right there. It goes deeper into the neural